Yeah, I mean, I have lots on the engineering front. Like we're kind of working on a new set of bond types with Brian. Just looking through like a lot of the Olympus stuff. I don't know if you guys have been reading the papers that Zeus wrote. There's a couple other papers. The one from Berkeley was pretty interesting on stochastic control systems for bond emissions as how they work.
What's
Quite cool
the
to see.
what's the explain like I'm five on that? I saw a lot of formulas.
Uh,
I saw the academic papers. I was like, okay, this looks smart. And I'm not a policy expert, but like, can you help distill some of that down? And it does relate to KLIMA a bit, but just for like protocol on
yeah.
liquidity.
So
What does it mean for the average, if you will?
yeah, definitely. So like there's I guess two papers, right? So we can talk about the Zeus paper, which is like the bond driven economy paper, and then there's the Berkeley paper, which talks about like Ohm, like 3-3 mechanics and like bond emission controls and like that one. That one's just like more like an observational analysis paper. The Zeus paper that I was talking to Zeus about after he like published it, we were talking about it. Um, but basically like it's yeah, it changes a lot of like the mechanics underlying like what's happening in Ohm. Still like fundamentally the same. However, in favor of a more bond-driven economy rather than a staking-driven one, which is like obviously the next phase of what Ohm has to be, right? Because Ohm is not running out of emissions, but like their APY is basically reducing, and they've kind of hit that, in issue enough currency to actually supply as a currency. So that paper is really good. Like, to explain ELI 5, explanation of it is move away from staking and more towards bonding in both directions, and then like also not increase, but like enhance the bond types, if you will. So specifically, like he talks in that paper, him and Indigo, they talk about basically the mechanics for how you would have bonds that are tradable. So not just bonds, like now when you bond in KLIMA or Ohm, you get a 5-day bond. It's mapped to your address, and that's it, right? Like there's nothing fancy about it. Like you can't transfer it, you can't do anything with it, and there's like a fixed price that's linearly emitted over those 5 days, which is great because you get a discount and blah 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 blah. Now, when you start pushing size, like in terms of like complexity as well as currency size, um, what you can do with this is you can then extend this timeline and you can actually start trading the bond itself. So you have this like market that emerges, like secondary market on top of the actual underlying bond mechanics. So you have to at first build that possibility, though that's like a smart contract that has to be written, et cetera, that Seuss is working on with Indigo and all those guys, because it was well received what they talked about. So basically, you would create a bond. Let's say it's like a 30-day maturation bond, right? 1 month. In that 30 days, you have the opportunity to sell your bond, and someone else can come and buy it based on like if whether or not they value that the discount will go up or down. It's essentially like on-chain futures, if you want to talk about like what that is,
Right.
and the bond basically locks in a specific price. So you holding the bond is like a long, and you selling the bond is a short. Um, really, really cool.
Hmm.
Definitely like only required in later stages of a currency market, like when you have much more circulating supply, much more market cap. I mean, Ohm is getting hammered too, but this is kind of like the future of what's going to happen, and this is doubly true in the carbon markets, right? So like, it's kind of funny, like the actual money market bonds are interesting, sure, yeah, like they are, but in carbon it's even more so because you can issue bonds that are extremely long and then trade on them because like the time frames and windows are much longer, so you can
Right.
have like 5 10 year bond maturation because like that's how long a carbon project takes, or like that's how long it takes for delivery, and so you can adapt a lot of these principles, and like this market basically unveils like a whole new avenue for like financing, because you can basically like open a bond with an actual project developer, and then they can, they can promise to deliver whatever many tons you purchase in the contract, and then you can buy or sell that contract based on your confidence that they will actually deliver. And so if they will deliver, you get them at an extreme discount from what the market values carbon at. If they don't deliver, then you can basically short them to zero. So it basically allows you to value the future emissions of a particular bond type, which is pretty cool, and basically allows for a more dynamic market to emerge. It's very, very fascinating stuff. So I'm keen to see like their first pass at implementation. I talked to Zeus about it. I was like, let me know if you guys want to work together on this, because like we have some input on it as well. And he's like, yeah, like we'll see. So when they have one out, I'm gonna look at it, because like we would probably tweak it in terms of timing. Like ours will be much longer, because carbon markets and refi in general moves at a slower pace than the broader DeFi market. So there's that side of it as well.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
it's considered like a maturation of Olympus right now, that this is
yes,
kind of an issue, but it's not a problem necessarily. It's just more. I kind of saw it as like this unintended experiment, not
yeah,
experiment, but like just this thing that came about from what I had read. But yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks.
yeah. It's a really cool paper. Like even if you don't understand it, like just read it, because the way it's written is like you can tell with a lot of thought. So I'd like recommend it, even if you don't like totally get everything that's happening in there. It's a good read.
Yeah, I was looking at it at a coffee shop, so I was hoping people saw like all the formulas behind me on the screen. This guy's wicked smart.
Wow. That's why he drinks coffee and reads papers. Wow.
Look at that
Oh
guy.
my god. I can't talk to him. He's too cool.
Little do they know his
That's
name
funny.
is Little Yapper.
Yep. Not very. Yep.
Yeah, oof. And then there's the other paper, which is from Berkeley, which examines 3.3 as a model, and more specifically, Ohm in general as a currency and its mechanics underlying it, like specifically bond control. It's a really cool paper too. Different paper from the one I was talking about that still isn't published, but I think they're working on DML stuff. I gotta check in with those guys, see where they're at. But that paper basically talks about how bonds are an effective monetary instrument, especially in DeFi. They talk about like how algorithmically controlled stuff, pretty much everything that you know today is basically just a PID controller. Which, if you don't know what PID is partial integral derivative. It's like a controller. It's based on a bunch of math that tries to predict the outcome based on an input. So you put in like a number, and then you predict the number on the end based on that. And then PID controllers are very commonly used in other stochastic processes that are pressure, volume, temperature, like those types of things, where state changes are change, but they are limited. Good place to look at PIDs. A good example is like your refrigerator, or like your 3D printer or whatever. They all use PIDs, so to control the temperature inside it. So like changes to the refrigerator is like a really good example, right? Like the fridge remains more or less the same temperature at all times. When you introduce something like a warm dish that is going to be cooled down in the fridge, the PID controller basically realizes that the temperature is increasing, so then basically counteracts it by decreasing the temperature in the fridge and basically coming out back to the same steady state. It's a very responsive type system, so it reacts to changes in a much more aggressive way. And there's like a whole bunch of math that basically describes this. Like it's super straightforward, and it's really fascinating. So PID controllers are really good at maintaining a specific stability. They are really bad at responding to change. So this is why you see like algorithmic like token designs. They sometimes have these like variations, and like stabilizing them is very hard. So like a good example was Titan Finance was like essentially a PID controlled system. They basically just fell apart like so fast as soon as like the controller couldn't catch up. Frax is like a partially algorithmically designed one. So like external actors essentially act as the PID control for it, which basically like, tightens that and it becomes more tuned, so to say. There's like a bunch of other like systems that describe, but like fundamentally most of DeFi in these like algorithmic scenarios where like price is controlled or capacity is controlled or something's controlled, it's all PID. What the paper talks about specifically is that ohm style bonds are not PIDs. They're actually described as much higher order mathematical functions. I think they use a few, I don't remember the names, but a couple of them basically describe a lot of Gaussian stuff in there, but like, I don't know if I agreed with it, but how I would have described it, but it's good. Like it's a good approximation on how the actual system works because it's all controlled within the debt, right, in the bond controller contracts. And this is a much more stable system in comparison to PID design systems. So this whole paper just examines like the stability of like how bonds manage price. And you can see it, right? Like in the charts, like the average discount is always pretty much the same because like people will always take a similar stance. You can look at like a lot of the charts on the dune actually reflect how stable the actual system is in terms of pricing itself. And it's all algorithmically determined on its own, right? Whereas like in PID systems, sometimes you have to have like external impulse responses to actually get it correct. Or sometimes you have to tune it yourself to make sure that it's right. The bonds paper, this paper basically describes ohm as like this new generational product that changes the landscape of this type of control, which is really cool. I mean, and it has like implications for KLIMA as well because we use the same system. Like it basically allows us to like stably price how we issue stuff, and it's that's very apparent if you look at the charts. Like they basically don't deviate from where they are. So it's a cool, very very cool system. I really liked that paper. It was very heartwarming. I was the word I'm going to use, but it basically just like reaffirmed that this system truly is revolutionary and like people should really take note of what it is. I think people like gets lost on people quite a bit. Like they think the staking APY is the end all be all, but actually the true innovation lies in the bond controller mechanics.
I enjoyed those explanations.
Yeah.
Cheers for that,
But yeah, I
Archie.
mean those are yeah, no problem.
So it's been a pretty massive week, I think, in terms of partnerships and moving things forward. It's really, really exciting for us with Eco now. I'm sure everybody's seen that announcement. I mean, KI is kind of in full swing. There's quite a big pipeline of different partners coming into this. And just at a high level, I think it's really important to appreciate like what this means for the usage of the on-chain carbon market, right? Because what we've done thus far is we brought a tremendous amount of liquidity into the space, and that in itself is somewhat revolutionary for the carbon market in terms of looking at the transparency, the price discovery, being able to semi-commodify and have indices of different types of offsetting projects, etc. And to do this in a way that's decentralized, number of different parties coordinating. And that's been great, but what we need now actually is stronger interaction with the market, i.e. like having greater demand from different parties. So there's some really interesting things happening there. I mean, KI is one answer to this from KLIMA's side, being able to have a dashboard where people can simply retire, connect with partners to actually analyze their emissions and know what that is. Being able to stake KLIMA using a portion of their rebases eventually to purchase carbon offsets, retire them, et cetera, and being able to track all that through a dashboard, which is just a super transparent way for companies to showcase their climate pledges. So that's really exciting. We hear from other players that are rolling out, their own initiatives to attract demand. There's other, bridges that are moving in right now. There are other projects working on really interesting offsetting capabilities that are even cross-chain, being able to source liquidity from the Polygon ecosystem that we've catalyzed, and then being able to provide offsetting services on other chains as well. So this is the stage where people now start building off of this market that has been incentivized through KlimaDAO, right? So it's super exciting. It's a very, very important step in getting recognition of all of this. And I think, there are off-chain players, or let's say traditional players that don't really interact with DeFi at all, that have watched this with a lot of interest. And once the interfaces are in place where they can actually source offsets on chain and do so in a really easy manner, we're going to see their their involvement and quite quickly, because we're still dealing with a legacy system that's typified by these opaque OTC deals through a variety of different stakeholders. And I think, when the companies realize that they can simply select different projects that are available on chain, see the pricing immediately, purchase, retire, have these certificates issued automatically, etc., it's a completely different user experience. And of course, there's a lot of UI challenges. That's just the fact with DeFi right now. But those are going to be overcome, and it makes me really excited. I think like everyone in KLIMA very excited to see how many projects are really pursuing this, let alone the amazing talent that we have building out KI right now. So that's a high level on that, and I'll pause there if others want to chime in about KI or some of the interesting partnership things happening now. And if not, on another note, like generally with the carbon markets right now, still even over the past month, both compliance and voluntary carbon markets have continued to see an uptick. And so, as macroeconomic conditions change a little bit, we'll see what's happening here. But carbon's been quite resilient in the past. So, hopefully those positive tailwinds keep moving things forward. Shall we open it up for Q&A?
Yeah, I was going to say if we could take some questions.
Can you guys not hear a little yapper?
No.
Yeah, he was he was in the middle of something. But yeah, it's utility, right? Carbon markets are generally historically pretty resilient, but we need to connect our utility, our interface to those markets. That's where we're at. That's what we're going to be focused on. Building out that utility, building out the demand generation to connect that utility. Our initial users, we're working closely with them to really understand how best to serve them, and make it an easy experience for them, where they basically select a few options and then click go, and a full carbon strategy gets executed on their behalf, including retirements, etc., so that they can have a strong climate positive pledge. So utility.
100%. Let's see if there's any requests to come up. I don't see anything yet. Are there any questions that we have in the office hours chats? Let's see here. I see a comment about thermodynamics being utilized in DeFi. Interesting.
Model of iPhone, so it sounds like it may be an issue with their like specific hardware, software, firmware situation. That's about all I've got on that.
Yeah. All right. They
there
admitted it was a boring question, but it sounds like it's not. So, someone mentioned, accessing the dApp from browser built into MetaMask, maybe updating iPhone or, I'm looking for some other questions and scan in chat for anyone that wants to post or raise their hand. We can take some people up here.
Yeah, there was a question earlier about a demo of the KLIMA Infinity Pledge dashboard. We have a wireframe mockup, but we don't have a fully functional product to show you yet. But we'll definitely be getting one out there as soon as we have something to show.
Yeah, we're still aiming for a Q2 for the MVP on that. That wireframe gives you a good idea of where we're heading. There are some features that we are including into the dashboard that aren't really represented in that wireframe. Part of that is to put something out there and get feedback and to understand. And we've already started to capture some of that feedback and generate some good ideas. But it's shaping up to be a very powerful product for the space. We're still on track for a Q2 launch on that.
Okay. I don't know the answer to this one, but maybe someone else does. It was if Mobilum, will they require KYC?
I don't think so. In terms of the widget that I've seen, I've not gone through the process myself. That is coming live soon. I mean, from what I understand, the extent of the KYC is your billing information, because you are making it is a fiat on-ramp, and it's being delivered to your non-custodial wallet. And so the traditional KYC, like passport scan or whatever, I think no. But I think we should, as it goes live and we go through the process, we'll know for sure. But I think for now it's billing details or banking details.
Yeah, I think because you're using your KYC on your banking platform for your debit or credit card. So we'll release some guidance on that. I probably should know more, but good question. Another was on the back of the Eco KLIMA Infinity announcement. Was there any kind of other inbound interest? Yes. There's been new submissions put forth, but also I think some of the people familiar with Eco, whether it's investors or people that have helped build it or associated with it, they were also really curious in learning more about KLIMA Infinity. So that's what's nice. We have some organic interest that's trickling in. We're also going out and doing a lot of demand gen on our own. But yeah, certainly like the Ego helped bring a few more new leads in.
Yeah, overall we're seeing good response for where we're at. I think as Lil Yapper said, it's already opened up some very interesting high level conversations with various very large organizations or people that represent them. So it's definitely generated the type of interest that we want. I think for myself, I think that's all good, and we need to continue to work with those people and understand what they find interesting and how we might be able to help them and connect them into the ecosystem. But I think for myself, I'm really focused on the utility and what we could do to make the onboarding easier. So that's really what I'm looking at. So not necessarily the caliber of people that have expressed interest, which is certainly high, but just more generally what they need. The commonalities between their needs, so that they can just get started, because that is the goal.
Yeah, as we kind of talked about yesterday, there's a ton of companies that want to do this, but similarly, like they don't know where to start. It's a great problem that we help solve, and I think why we've pushed to make this as easy as we can. But yeah, some of the onboarding in the beginning, starts with measurements, understanding the scope of their emissions for that company, and yeah, we're well equipped to do that. So. In Eco's case, we have a good idea of what that is. But yeah, as other people come in and they want to know, it's likely been on their mind for a while. They just haven't had a way to do it. And so I'm really excited to offer them this kind of solution. Maybe this is for Archie. Did you ever find out who front run deployed the USDC BCT pool? I think that there was a tweet.
Yeah, we did. And he got like ousted. It was
Yeah,
like some dumb guy on Twitter, and then I forget his like some .eth name, and yeah, he like thought it was a meme, and he thought he was funny, and then like he got absolutely ripped apart by the community for being a moron.
yeah, he looks.
Yeah,
It was
and
a
he
bad look.
apologized.
I think he offered to like. There was. I should dig up the tweet. I'm not that. Maybe we're not that petty, but there was like some. I don't know. He tried to give something back, or he did apologize.
Yeah, he like tried to make amends because he knew that he fucked up, but like it was pretty funny. Like it's funny now. It wasn't funny then. I was freaking out because I was like, God damn it! Now I have to like. Yeah, it was not a cool time, but
we've moved past
that
it.
guy sucked.
Yeah, we're trying to be forward-looking here, but good trivia question.
Vitalik.eth, he did it. Yeah.
I do have a couple of updates I forgot to mention earlier about the retirement functionality. So one exciting development is we're working with Moss to bring MCO2 retirement to Polygon, making some good progress there. They've already got a contract up. We just need to test everything. And then, so we're hoping to integrate that into the retirement tool we're launching, so that you'll be able to offset either BCT or MCO2 through the same interface. Yeah, and we're looking to launch that in a few weeks. We're tying everything together, making sure that the front end works as expected, and that the contract is properly retiring.
That's pretty huge. I mean, that brings us closer to the retirement aggregator vision.
Yep.
Ooh, Bitmos. I got an answer for that one. We're still quiet for the time being. There's still no country or nation state that has issued an IDMO, so we're still waiting. However, there are some countries like stepping up, and they're going to. I think it was. I read about it yesterday. I think it was Malaysia. Somebody in Southeast or North Asia, Malaysia, right? Basically said that they're going to start trading their internationally determined allowances, which is like a huge step. Whether or not they actually issue an IDMO is like the next piece of that. But if they do, hopefully, then we can get our hands on it. I know Joseph was talking about it on a couple of his podcasts in the last little while, how they're working on it. It's just like this is very much like a hurry up and wait scenario. You build a cool product and then you just sit around and wait until somebody's like, yeah, we want to use this. Got any other questions? If you want to raise your hand, I'm still reading through the chat.
Yeah, Alice just asked an interesting question that I think we can shed some light on. Why the price of carbon, on-chain and off-chain are so different? What's needed to sync the prices? And this is sort of the adoption question, right? so far, majority of actors who have adopted on-chain offsets are, DeFi natives who are already comfortable operating on-chain. But really what's needed to bring those prices in line is for, large market participants in the off-chain market to realize the value of what's trading on-chain, and that it's trading at a lower price than what they're seeing for the same Vera offsets off-chain. And that will, that's basically the impetus behind KLIMA Infinity and all of our partnerships, is to try to attract that attention to the fact that there is a deal right now in the on-chain market. And as more market participants realize that there's an on-chain market and there's an off-chain market and the prices can diverge, the more robust that correlation will become between the on-chain prices and the off-chain prices.
We're going to win by providing a superior experience. The prices are going to make that attractive initially, but as we execute on the utility I keep talking about, that's the main thing. Is we are in a great position to offer a superior experience than the legacy market players are accustomed to, and so it's really, once that utility comes online for them, it's going to essentially be a no-brainer.
Yep, exactly. And I think the other factor here is the diversification of bridging. I think will also inspire more confidence in the off-chain market, that there isn't a reliance on like a single actor, like Toucan, for instance, to be the only bridge in the space. I think that as more bridges come online, it will increase the confidence of off-chain participants in the on-chain market, especially with large players like Aether, standing behind a bridge like C3. I think that's definitely going to change the perspective of the off-chain market.
Yeah, Moss CO2 or MCO2 is held up pretty well too. At least like in terms of other volatility from crypto. I think that's like the hope, is that there is more parity reached between these. And right now, yeah, I think for someone that sees them as equal and still wants to make the retirements, it's kind of waiting for them.
There was another question about the APY targets and the reward framework. So, right now the situation we're in is KIP 14 made it clear that the community understands that we're in resilience mode right now. Our goal is to survive long enough to make the impact that we plan to make. And a big part of that is setting realistic expectations for the growth of the treasury, in the current market conditions. So, thankfully, and I think we're all really happy with the way the community responded to KIP 14. Everyone's aligned that this is about the long term. This is about maximizing the impact of refi and the growth of refi. So, we need to pace the growth of KLIMA's supply with the growth of the on-chain carbon market. Basically, the APY quoted of 1,000% as our target implies the treasury will have 10 times as much carbon in a year. So, that's an ambitious goal, but it's much more achievable than the 8,000% APY target of 80 times the amount of carbon. So, I think we're definitely going to continue monitoring the rate of new carbon coming on chain. But what this 1,000% APY really gives us is time, enough runway to allow new refi actors like C3, like Flow, Goddess DAO to come online and bring more offsets and more participants into the space. So we're going to be adjusting APY moving forward, adjusting reward rate really based on the rate of that growth. All of that being said, basically policy is probably going to have to put forward a new version of KIP3, a revised reward rate framework that takes into account the slower than anticipated growth in refi. So I don't have a concrete timeline on when we'll have that, but we're going to try to have that ready by the time we need to make another adjustment, which at the current runway, we have some time here at 1,000%. Brian, did I put that well? Any other?
Yes, that was explained perfectly.
We have some hands raised here.
Hi there. Just want to ask a question about your rebranding. So I've seen you've had a very successful rebrand, and I like what you guys have done from where you've been. So my question is, can you tell us a little bit more about the decision process, like how you came through that and what you think works well and not so well about the new design? Thank you.
Wish we had Leontari up here. Yeah, I mean, the design team, the marketing team, they did a real professional killer job in terms of creating an entire brand guide and really driving into, you know, what our brand means. We're in an interesting space since we have a real world use case that has a huge total addressable market because it reaches across not every, you know, not just all organizations of all size, but consumers, you know, people themselves. And it's so how can we create a brand that speaks to the entire world essentially, and at once, you know, captures this important mission that we have around, you know, climate change itself, as well as, you know, still speaking to the fact that we have a business as well, right? That we need to develop products that meet demand. We need to find product market fit, and so it's a lot of competing ideas there, and just watching that process evolve. I believe these brand guides have been released. They're really great to, you know, check out, super professional, but it's been really great to see, you know, the marketing design teams and the creative portion of the contributors, you know, create that over time. They went really deep.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It was a good point for us to highlight that. Yeah, they did a great job.
Hey, hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Hello.
Yes. I've been a part of this community since its inception. I don't know if a lot of people on here have, but I'm a day one investor, right? And I have been aware of the market downturn in general for DAOs, but for KLIMA specifically, even before the downturn, it was on a downtrend. So I've noticed throughout the times, this request has been asked a lot, and I think you guys have shut it down quite often and been blunt about that scene of it, which is maybe a VC or, you know, expanding on investments for the greater good of the investors into KLIMA. I think I may have mentioned it before also, where it's like, you know, of course I understand where KLIMA is and what it stands for, but investments into other companies can also better, or other projects can also better the whole ecosystem for KlimaDAO, you know, and it's quite tough right now to see the price beyond 99% down. It's like 99 point something. It's very high up there compared to Ohm or Wonderland, so to say. So I know it stands on its own. So my question is, what investments moving forward to benefit investors now that would actually impact the project for the greater good of the entire community? Because I've been sitting back and watching, and it to me, it's, well, you know, I would even have to fill
Yeah,
in.
it's the investments and the utility. I mean, you know,
But
everyone that's
the utilities in the future. So
yeah,
right,
but
exactly.
but
I'm
it
speaking
is
for investors
about,
now, not the future.
well, it's about building out the utility in the market so that we can actually address the huge amount of demand. I mean, the thing you have to remember is that regardless of market conditions, we have a lot of carbon in our treasury that floats our value, right? I mean, that's the important thing here, and ensuring that we have the longevity to build out the tokenized carbon market use case. That is the important thing here. We're 4 months old. If you looked at it as a SaaS, with the amount of value that we have in our treasury, a 4-month-old SaaS startup with that much value in its treasury, value that is expected by all measures to grow over time, because the importance of climate change and the importance of the voluntary carbon market in regards to that. The best thing and the only thing we can be doing right now is building utility to meet the demand in the marketplace.
Okay. Will there be any investments into any other companies to grow the ecosystem or KlimaDAO?
So I think what I'm hearing is that like you're asking like, are we going to take risky bets with the treasury? That's what I'm hearing.
It's not a risky
like, no,
bet. I mean, investments can be into something stable. Get me? Like it's right now the risky bet is what I mean. When you're already down so much, I mean, what other risk is there? You get me? If we're betting on the future, and the future is the risk itself, why downplay the actual attempts to benefit everybody?
I guess
I think you're talking about benefiting in the short term at the cost of the long-term opportunity, and that does not sound like a sound strategy in this industry at all.
Yeah, also like it doesn't fit the model of what we do. Like the only project that does that like invests in projects seemingly is Wonderland. And Wonderland, as we know, is a complete disaster. It's run by one guy and his friend who's a criminal, and they
but it's not.
just invest
Let's
in
be
stuff.
clear on that, though. Let's be very clear on that. It's a disaster not because of the investments. It's because of literally the two guys. If you look at their investments, it's very successful.
Well, and
I mean, they have the biggest treasury in crypto. We have to be factual. The biggest treasury in all of the DAOs. They basically went into first place instantly. The fastest growing. Also, they leverage traded. So yeah, those are risky. I do agree with you guys, but let's not downplay that also with the guy being a criminal and things like that, because the investments they've made into projects, even ones that were not created, have made profit. They've made people money, even probably now. You know?
Yeah, we're not gonna do that. That's not the goal of KLIMA, plain and simple. And like they got burned horribly, and Wonderland is not successful by any means, right? Like if you look at what they've actually done, like the treasury makeup that you're talking about is mostly time, like their own currency. It's not other currencies. So it wasn't the biggest because it had other stuff in it. No, it's a complete, yeah, that place is a disaster. And we don't do that, and that's not our aim here. Our aim here is to acquire carbon, and will always be that. We're not going to ever be a VC or a hedge fund into carbon. We may, work with people who are working on stuff like that, where you can basically do that. But fundamentally, that's what we're about, is becoming a carbon-backed currency. And, we've done very successfully so far. I mean, 15 million tons is like not a joke, right? Like,
yeah, but speaking tons into cash value is also important, because I can talk about sand all day, but that's not the reality of what people are seeing. Like I say, it sounds great on your end, because the whole point of the project is for carbon and things like that, making the earth great and in these factors. I agree with you. It's doing very successful. But in terms of investors, I feel like you're very passive. You're just, this whole time, even the way your tone is now, is laughing and talking about Wonderland, even though I told you their treasury and investments have made people a lot of money.
Sure.
One way or another.
I think we're focused on the utility here.
Yeah, like
this
the
is
utility
what we need to be doing
utility.
for investors. Period. That's the best thing we can do. You're suggesting that we pivot our entire strategy after 4
Not
months.
entire.
That
Just
makes
make it a
that
part of
makes
it.
no sense. That makes no sense. Okay, that makes no sense from any perspective. It makes no sense.
Elon Musk sells, Elon Musk sells cars for his
Elon Musk would tell
main
you.
goal.
Elon Musk would tell you that if you were worried about volatility, you should not invest, because we're not here to satisfy day traders. We're here to
Yeah, I
satisfy
agree.
long-term demand. Okay,
Yes.
that is the important thing here. All right, and how we do that is we tap into this huge addressable market. Period. And how
I
we do
agree.
that is through building out utility. Well, if you agree, then you realize that it takes some time to build that utility. Period. Right? Suggesting that we
The
should
utility
pivot our
has always
strategy at
been
this
there. I'm
moment
saying
makes no sense.
yes, you're
Makes no
transferring it
sense.
over to crypto. I agree with you on that. But I started the convo by saying I have been in this project since day one. So when you emphasize with, oh, you're not having this project for day traders, I'm not one of them. I only invest. So when
Yeah,
you
But
when you
yet
like
you're
when you
asking for
downplay
short-term remedy or some way to create short-term value. That sounds like what a day trader would say. What I'm telling you is we're focused on building long-term utility. Okay, you need to look at the overall expected growth of this market. And what that means at this moment is that we need to shore up our resources to ensure we have the ability to build that utility, period. The opportunity is there. We're well positioned for that opportunity. There's actually no better player in the Web3 space when it comes to carbon markets to see this and make it a reality than we are, right? So to suggest that we should pivot our strategy when we're, by all other accounts, that we're perfectly positioned for what we're doing, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I think we're going to move on. Bitcoin Genie, I don't want you to feel like we aren't, like we're shutting you down. You know, we hear you, and I hope you feel like we have at least voiced your, aired your concerns and hopefully addressed them. Moon, the person I just invited disappeared. Could you raise your hand
Do
again?
the last question too, and then we can wrap it up.
Hello. I'm just gonna assume that you guys can hear me because I can't hear anyone. First of all, I just want to tell everybody that I'm a big believer in the project, and I believe that what we are doing is going to help us in the long run. And I appreciate all the developers and everybody who is taking all these questions and who are letting people speak. So my question is regarding the base carbon tons and regarding what KLIMA is actually doing. I'm sorry, it is very it's a very naive question, but I just want to know that, okay, like let's say I invest in KLIMA and let's say I offset some carbon, but where are these carbons coming from? So I just want to take an example of, let's say, an industry in China, or a factory in China that is producing a lot of pollution. And how does me buying KLIMA token is going to affect them in any way? Because that company in China is going to obviously be working with the Chinese government, and there are a lot of corrupt governments in the world. I understand that base carbon ton. So, for example, Moss Carbon, they are doing something with Amazon forest. So basically, when you buy the Moss token, you can actually they do something with the Brazilian government, and they are actually buying credits from the Brazilian government. But how does me buying KLIMA or us buying KLIMA affect any industry in countries like India, Bangladesh, China, which are producing a lot of pollution? Like, how does it force their hand? That's just my question. I'm sorry, it's a very basic question, but I just want to know, how does it affect it? Thank you.
This is a really good question and very refreshing. So how do we have an impact on the market? So to date, since October, we already have in many areas, like these carbon tons that we've purchased have gone up 3 times in price, like on the traditional market, which is huge. I mean, that basically creates viability for a lot of these projects to create more carbon projects. So there's like, this comes back to a question that was asked on a previous office hours too. It's like, well, do we have any duty to do stuff that's boots on the ground? Boots on the ground stuff is handled by carbon projects themselves. So if you today decide that you want to operate a new carbon project, you want to do some sort of carbon mitigation strategy that follows under some voluntary standard, whether that's Verra, gold standard, whatever you want to do. You execute it, 18 months later, you get carbon tons issued to you. You then have to then sell those, right? You have 2 choices. You can sell them to traditional market players. You can go and try and find them. There's many people buying these tons. You have to know a lot of people. It's very much like a VC game. It's who you know and how you can raise money that way. The other option is you can sell to the open market. The open market is pretty unforgiving. It's illiquid, number 2, and there's just not a lot of trading activity that happens in this space because price transparency is pretty discrepant in that sense. So your third option, which exists as of October last year, is to tokenize it, bring it on chain, and sell it to KLIMA in the form of a bond. KLIMA will buy your carbon tons, and you can basically continue to do the projects that you want to do and purposely bring carbon tons to the KLIMA treasury. And KLIMA's treasury only grows with more carbon tons coming into it. So by buying KLIMA, you are effectively contributing to this demand of buying carbon tons. And that's like the measurable impact that's happening. And that's what's happening in the outcome of what is, important to what we see today. And, it's perhaps a roundabout way, but like, it's much easier to do this, to buy this KLIMA and stake it, than it is to go source a carbon project, go and find all these people. Like, those people will remain, and they largely continue to do the same stuff. Joseph Pillant, one of our advisors, is a really good example of this. He's been doing it for 13 years. That's all he does. He lives and breathes carbon projects, and he's built so many over the years, worked on a lot of really, really important stuff that we see today, standards, all that stuff. And those people will continue. And our job is just to spur demand for those tons. Because if there's demand, if people are buying it, then those people will continue to do so. And that's how you spur all this like really important impact that you're talking about, is basically by contributing to this. Make sense? Oh, where do you go?
Yeah, it was a great question. He jumped off right after asking.
It's like, okay, here's my question. Bye. So it's a really good question. Anyway, I think we can cover it here. I mean, we've been on for an hour, and then we can be back next week. There's probably gonna be a lot more updates coming then as well. So we'll see what's coming. Oh, perfect. Yeah, he said in general. I heard you. Great. Okay, cool. Well, thanks everyone for coming. It's been great as usual. We'll talk to you soon. Anyway, bye for now.